So I've had this space in front of my base completely empty for a long time. I haven't had any idea what to do with it until today. While I'm reading today's stories, we're going to turn this area into like a little lounge area. Thank you guys so much for all the support recently on the videos, and without further ado, let's go ahead and get started with the first story. It's from r/nosleep from user Mr. Outlaw. I was paid to be a fake customer at a dying mall. Something strange is happening in there. So my life pretty much derailed back in spring 2022. This is when the downward spiral, so to speak, really began for me. Trust me, this is necessary context for the rest of this. I was at Buffalo Wild Wings, watching some UFC fights with some friends, and decided to cook up a harmless little parlay before the main card. I'd never gambled on anything before and only had this vague understanding of how it worked. But I had just passed some exams and was about 5 or 6 drinks deep, and the world just seemed so open and rife with possibilities, so I thought, why the hell not? I ended up turning $15 into over $200 that night, but based on the way I was acting, you would have thought I'd won 200 mil. The high was just that good, more visceral than I would have thought. I never reached that high ever again. Even after hitting ludicrous bets that paid out 50 to 60 times more, nothing really came close to replicating it. Which was really the crux of my issues. My dumbass just kept trying to chase it. As much as I'm sure you'd all love to hear it, I'm not going to go into a detailed timeline of my misery. Just know that it was bad. Probably worse than you're imagining right now. Bridges burned, legal trouble, having to avoid calls from very persistent debt collectors, the works. The only reason I've been able to somewhat keep my head above water for so long was due to my job. It was one of those positions that paid you a lot to sit around in an office and update a spreadsheet every now and then, maybe an hour of real work a day. I was lucky to land it, even luckier to be able to hang on to it for as long as I did. So when the consultants were hired and the fat started being trimmed, I really had no right to be as shocked as I was when I saw that notification from my manager waiting for me on Teams. I did end up with a pretty decent severance, and can you guess what I did with it? Well, I actually tripled it the following week, betting on golf of all things. Of course, I should have stopped right there and updated my LinkedIn, polished off my suit, registered for some networking events, but no, that wasn't going to work for me. In my head, no work meant more time to learn how to become a proficient gambler. Every night was spent diving into statistics, deep analytics, line movements, even sports psychology of all things. What's it called when you think you know a lot, but you really don't know shit? The Freddy Krueger effect? Something like that? Things were going all right for a while. Not great, but I was winning just enough that I was able to stomach it all. But then one night, I was completely coked out and decided to place a very large and stupid bet on a certain boxing match. It flopped hard. Then, in my desperation to recoup something, I cooked up another long shot parlay on some fights the following weekend. And I'm sure you can guess what happened. When I was laid off 4 months ago, I had a total of $45K in liquid savings and only $35K in debts. Across all my accounts now, I'm down to $27.50. As for the debts, I don't even know. I don't want to look. My cards are all maxed. My credit is shot. I can't talk to my family anymore. Friends are no longer my friends, and every day there are people who look like they enjoy breaking fingers standing outside of my apartment building. Sometimes they manage to make it in and knock furiously at my door, and I just have to pretend like I'm not there. By the time I finally came to my senses and began job searching again, I'd already dug a cavern for myself that was going to take some Herculean effort to scale out of. I did manage to get some interviews, but never made it to any second rounds. Maybe I was coming off as too strong out, I don't know. Side tangent, don't you hate it when they ask about gaps in your employment? It's like, screw off, man. Anyways, I haven't gotten an interview in a while, and things don't seem to be looking up there. A few days ago, the collectors actually tried physically breaking down my door. Got real close as well until one of my neighbors, this old military type, came out and threatened to shoot their kneecaps off if they didn't skedaddle. I got lucky there. I can't bank on getting lucky again though. Which leads me to last night. I was drunk off some bottom shelf vodka and decided to try some more shameful and unorthodox method of procuring funds. The method being using AI generated sob stories to e-bag on Reddit. Side note, do people actually do that? Like, is that a thing? Yeah, look, I was desperate and wasn't thinking straight, I know. Of course, I wasn't sure how much I'd be able to get out of it. Certainly not enough to put a tiny dent in the total debt, but maybe just enough to get the collectors off my back. For a while, and what more could I lose from trying? I still had the wherewithal to at least edit out most of the ChatGPT speak in the post before copying and pasting them to as many relevant subreddits as possible. Predictably, I got called out almost immediately, getting blocked from one community after another, but just when I was ready to give up, somebody shot me a message. I'll paste it below. Hey there, my name's Scott. I saw your post in blank. That really sucks, man. Really it does. I've been there and I think I can help. Now, I can't just give you money straight up because I don't have much myself, but I can offer you a quick and reasonably trouble-free way to get some. Nothing weird or illegal, so don't worry about that. I have a friend who's head of a property group that owns a mall. You said you live in blank, right? The mall's located in blank, so it shouldn't be too far of a drive. In any case, you'll be compensated for fuel. So here's the crux of the proposal. You see, the mall's not doing too well. These days, I think most malls aren't, but the location for this one is just so awful that it's doing worse than the rest of them. But for whatever reason, this guy isn't quite ready to let go of it. It's not that he even really cares about it being profitable, he just doesn't want it to get shut down and repurposed for something else. For whatever the reason. You know how weird rich people can be? Have you ever heard about mystery shoppers? It's not as eerie as it sounds. They're just people who are hired to walk around malls and shopping centers pretending to be customers. That's basically what he's recruiting for. To make it look like the place still has some juice left in it so that he can delay the inevitable for as long as he can. Again, for what? I don't know. You'll be given a certain window of time in which you're meant to walk around, doing your best to pretend like you actually have a reason for being there, which would involve some shopping, looking around, having a meal in the food court, etc. Once you enter the building, you'll go up to the Starbucks on the second floor. Go up to the barista and tell her that you're a part of the program, and she'll give you $100 cash. You can then go ahead and spend that $100 on whatever you'd like over the course of the time you're in there. Make sure you spend all of it. Don't try and keep it. They'll know. Once your time is up, you can simply leave, but don't try and leave early. Once again, they'll know. In order to receive compensation, you'll need to be in there for your entire allotted duration. You can stay longer if you'd like, but not a second less. I mean that literally, not even a second. Compensation is as follows: $250 for each hour spent there, to be e-transferred immediately upon your departure. If my friend likes your performance, there will be opportunity for you to come back. Let me know if this sounds like something you'd be interested in, and then I'll send you over some more details. Cheers. Okay, so clearly a joke, right? I'm being trolled. But then I tried to think about what the punchline possibly could have been and couldn't come up with anything. So I pivoted to the idea that maybe it was a scam, or maybe even more nefarious than that. The setup tracked well enough. Lure people out to somewhere remote under the pretense that they're about to make some good money, but not such good money that it seems like a glaring trap. $250 an hour for walking around a mall is just skirting that edge, in my opinion. But what the hell are they planning to do once I get there? Mug me? They know I'm broke as shit and don't have anything, so that can't be it. So what else do I have that's valuable? My organs? Maybe they'll kidnap me and torture me to death on the dark web? I think the reason I'm typing this all out is because I'm hoping when I read it back, something will click. That I'll be able to come to my senses and realize just how bad an idea it is. Because right now, against all logic, I'm genuinely considering it. Because those assholes are pounding on my door again. This time, they knocked for like 20 minutes straight. It got intense enough that I really thought they were going to give another go at breaking it down, but they didn't. Lucky me. I've thought about spending less time here, so that if they ever do storm in, I won't have to make a break for the fire exit. but I don't know where I'd go. Maybe the library or the gym. Though, if it ever comes to a point where I'm having to do all that, it's basically already over for me. There's no way to live. Trying to weigh everything now. Do I have anything to lose besides my life? Could things get worse than they are right now? One of the people I owe money to is a guy named Renzo. I met Renzo at a bar while I was watching the Canelo versus Crawford card. What was that, like 9 months ago? Jesus. So anyways, I met this guy there, and I was blitzed out of my head and told him very confidently to bet the house on Crawford. He seemed to like the cut of my jib, so he went ahead and did so. Not quite the house, but a pretty fat stack. I made him some good money that night. Made some good money myself. Then we just drank and drank until things got hazy, and the only other thing I really remember before waking up in his apartment the next morning, not what you think, was my face being pressed down into cold concrete. My clothes were still on, phone and wallet still in my pockets, and I was just slumped over on a couch with one side of my face stinging so bad it felt like something was pulsating beneath it. Looking at myself using the camera on my phone, I could see that half of my face was red and swollen, scratches overlapping each other like a bloody lattice. Then Renzo comes into the living room saying he couldn't believe what I did last night and how much of a dog I was. I didn't know what he was referring to, and I still don't. I never asked. So that's how I met the guy. I'd later find out that he traffics a lot of cocaine over the border and does a lot of it himself. And that there's a small jar sitting next to his TV containing several shriveled, dried up human ears that he claims used to belong to members of some outlaw gang in the Old West. I'm sure a reasonable person would have considered these things very carefully and concluded that they might be better off keeping their distance, but not me. In fact, I did the worst thing anybody could have possibly done. I ended up borrowing some money from him. Only around $3,000, maybe not a lot to some of you, but when you're dealing with this guy, it's still $3,000 too much. To be fair though, he was the one that had offered it up. Told me to throw it on whatever I thought might get some coin, and if I won, we could share the profits. I guess he was under the impression that I was some sort of master sports bettor and that I knew what the hell I was doing. I should have asked him what would happen if I'd lost before I accepted it. And I did lose. All of it. Couldn't pay him back even a cent. I didn't hide it from him, just told him the facts straight and clear. To which he smiled, told me it was all right, that I had a week to pay him back. That week turned into a month, then 2 months, then I just started flat out avoiding him. Wasn't picking up his calls, being very careful to scan my surroundings for any sign of him whenever I was out. Eventually, I guess he snapped and sent his goons after me, and now here we are. The reason I bring Renzo up is because he's the most pressing issue in my life right now. The guy's clearly not going away, and if I don't placate him soon, something very bad is going to happen, and I'm not going to be able to run from it. I just gave him a call, apologized for ducking him, and then asked him plainly how much money I'd need to give him at this point to square everything up, for him to call off his goons and leave me be. He told me $10,000, and if I didn't give it to him by Tuesday next week, he'd come up to my apartment himself and blast the door off its hinges. And that I could try leaving the city or getting the police involved, but that it wouldn't matter because eventually he would get me. And once he did, he'd skin me alive before tossing me into a vat of boiling oil. I told him okay, to meet me at the bar next Tuesday at noon and that I'd have the money. Then I hung up. Now I'm really panicking. I mean, I doubt the guy has access to a vat of boiling oil large enough to toss a body into, but I kind of believe him about the skinning alive part. $10,000 divided by $250 is 40 hours. I have about 170 hours before I have to meet him. I just messaged Scott back, telling him I was very much interested in the mall thing. Let's see what he says. It didn't take long for Scott to get back to me. He said he was glad to hear it, then asked when I could start. I told him immediately. Then I asked him how many hours he could get me before Tuesday. He told me he could maybe swing 35. I told him I really needed 40, and was there any way we could make that happen? He said no, 35 was a hard limit, but that he could probably vouch for me and get my rate up to $265 an hour. Then I tried pushing for $285, claiming that'd be the minimum I'd need in order to stave off eviction. Basically trying to guilt him into it. It was a long back and forth, but eventually we were able to come to a mutual agreement. He then sent me an address and told me to be there from exactly 2 to 9 tomorrow. I told him I appreciated it and sent him the details he'd asked for, which was just my name, age, phone number, and email. And that's it. No address, work history, social security number, literally anything else. They didn't even ask for a picture of my ID. Which was convenient, but also very sketchy. I mean, I could have been a literal bot, and how would he know? So many red flags that you could supply a parade with them. But it's not like I really have the luxury of backing out at this point. Maybe I could try leaving town, but I don't think I'd get too far. I don't think it'd end well. I told him I'd be there. A few hours later, he sent me another message, via email this time. Hey, it's Scott. Please remember this before you go. It's really important that you do your best to act like a real customer. From the moment you step inside to the moment you leave. If anybody comes up to you and asks what you're doing, tell them you're shopping or going to see a movie or grabbing lunch or just killing some time. Have a response ready and deliver it clearly and confidently. Absolutely no acting like a deer in headlights. Just be calm, be natural, don't think about it too much. And while you're in there, don't ask any questions of your own. You see or hear something weird, just ignore it. But if you ever feel like you're in genuine danger, don't hesitate to leave. You'll be paid in full for the day. Should any incidents transpire, please let me know. Tell me exactly what happened and I'll relay it to my friend. He likes to keep tabs on that sort of stuff. Also, one more thing I should have mentioned at the start. Try to keep what you see in there to yourself. Try not to talk about it too much, but if you do, because I know you probably will, just make sure to leave out the specifics. I know it sounds contradictory, but my friend would rather keep everything contained here. Good luck, man. Rooting for you. So yeah, not sure what to make of that, but I'm trying not to think about it. I thought about sending Scott another message, asking what kind of danger I could possibly expect, but screw it. Don't bite the hand that feeds you or something. It's late now, and I'm watching Breaking Bad for the 4th time, and I have about 8 hours before I need to be at the mall. I really should get some sleep, make sure I'm mentally sharp for tomorrow, but my heart's beating pretty fast, and I get the sense that rest won't come easy right now. I looked up the address, and it does seem to be a real, active place with real reviews. Nothing glaringly off about it other than the location. It's about a 25-minute drive from my apartment, and it's pretty out of the way, not very accessible. I think I have just enough left in my account to fill up my tank with just enough gas to get me there and back. Then that's it. So if this does turn out to be some stupid joke, then I'm really screwed tight. I'm done for. But I'll be screwed tight if I show up or not. And even if it is a trap and I show up and immediately get shot in the head or kidnapped and tortured, well, at least that means I won't have to deal with a lot of annoying shit in the future. Framing it that way, it really is a win-win-win, and I'm starting to feel better about it all. This guy's an optimist. I love it. I'm sitting in my car right now, and I'm feeling oddly mellow, more than I have in a long time. Could be a defense mechanism, my psyche trying to brace me for the unknown. Could also be the vodka Red Bull concoction I just finished chugging. Whatever it is, I'll take it. The parking lot here is larger than I'd expect, and about a fifth of the way full, which is surprising to me, given the location. It might be a stretch to call it in the middle of nowhere, but just based on a cursory glance, you could make a case for it. No other buildings around, no other signs of life at all, just a desolate stretch of highway on one side and a dense forest on the other. It's about 10 minutes out of the city, smack dab between some gray industrial area and a long stretch of farmland. I can't fathom what the target demographic was here. It's about 10 before 2. A lot of thoughts running through my head, but I'm doing a good job of stamping most of them out. In another 5 minutes, I'll head in. It's just after 8 now, and I'm sitting in the food court, sipping on the remnants of a milkshake. Not so mellow anymore. It's been strange here, real bizarre, and I'm still trying to process it. When I'd first entered, which I made sure to do it exactly too, I'd followed Scott's instructions and immediately headed up to the second floor. Looking around the place, it seemed typical enough. There was the usual fare: H&M, Foot Locker, Bath and Body Works, Sephora, candy shops, stores selling cute but useless toys and knickknacks. Not quite bustling with activity anywhere, but also not empty enough for it to feel eerie. Though it feels really weird knowing that everybody you pass by is likely there for the same messed up reason you are. So I've been trying to avoid making any eye contact. I spent a lot of time searching around for the Starbucks and eventually found it tucked away in some corner, all the way at the end of a long string of dead and vacant storefronts. Almost like they'd made some concerted effort to hide it, or maybe it was just a coincidence. Don't want to get too conspiratorial yet. I walked inside and the only person in there other than the barista was this dude sitting at a table with a half-eaten sandwich in front of him. He didn't look up or really register my presence at all, just kept staring blankly ahead at something. I don't know what, couldn't figure it out. Maybe the painting of abstract shapes on the wall? I went up to the barista, who had short blonde hair and looked to be in her 20s. I offered up with a smile, which wasn't reciprocated, not that I really cared. What did catch me off guard was the look on her face, like I was the scourge of the earth or something. Like I'd just murdered 10 puppies in front of her and then laughed about it. I was so puzzled by this that my train of thought completely derailed for a second and I forgot what I was supposed to say. After stumbling through several half-baked sentences, it finally came back to me and I spat it out. I'm, part of the program. She sighed and actually rolled her eyes before asking me what I wanted to order. I just stared at her, no clue what to say, probably looking bewildered. I told her again that I was a part of the program. She shook her head, sighed again. You're supposed to buy something first, she told me, keeping her voice really low while staring daggers at me. They didn't tell you? I shook my head and told her no, they didn't. You're supposed to buy something and hand me some cash, and then I give you the change. Get it? I remembered starting to get lightheaded there. Thinking, was this real? Was I dreaming? So order something and then give me some cash, she went on. Doesn't matter how much, just give me something. I told her I'd have a black coffee and began digging through my wallet, surprised and relieved to find a crumpled $1 bill in there. I took it out and handed it to her. She snatched it quickly out of my hand and dumped in the register, then gave me back a small stack crisp of $10 bills. I counted them quickly, 10 total. I turned around, getting ready to leave, but then she called me back, asking did I forget about something. I stopped, turned around, and she went about making the coffee, her movement slow, almost labored. I noticed that she was walking with a limp. It took her a few minutes to finish up, and then she held out the cup, giving me one last glare as I grabbed it from her. I'd never been more glad to be leaving a Starbucks. Like I said, really bizarre stuff, but as I'd come to find out, this was only the tip of the iceberg. I took a sip of the coffee, and it tasted burnt to hell, just completely god-awful, so I tossed it, and made my way over to one of those mall directory things. Still had a lot of time to kill, so I began perusing the options. Eventually, I settled on heading over to the Chili's, having a margarita or 2 or 3. Yes, I have problems. I went back down to the first floor, keeping my vision squared ahead, trying not to draw any attention to myself. At one point, I walked past a woman that looked to be in her early 60s, late 70s, and I had to wonder. Was she here for the money as well, or did she just happen upon this place of her own volition? I almost wanted to ask her directly, but thought better of it. Arriving at the Chili's, I headed straight for the bar and was surprised to find most of the seats there occupied. Most lively place I'd seen in the mall by far, though there wasn't a soul at any of the tables. It was a mixed group. Men, women, some old, some young, all seeming pretty drunk and glaring at me malevolently, as if I were intruding on something sacred. Well, I thought, this was just the way it was going to be. I tried not to take it too personally. I took a seat at the end of the bar, trying and failing to catch the bartender's attention. It was a youngish guy, maybe early 30s, big beard and pencil-thin arms covered in tattoos. I think it took about 5 full minutes before he finally, reluctantly looked my way. He started to walk towards me, moving real slow as if trying to draw out the steps. "Yeah?" is all he said to me, his tone oozing with cold contempt. I told him that I'd have a margarita, along with a Budweiser. For a while, he continued to stare at me, his expression implying that I'd crossed some sort of line by asking to be served alcohol at a bar at Chili's. Then he took a deep breath through his nose and turned away, walked over to the liquor shelf. I watched him as he dumped some tequila into a glass, threw a lime wedge in it, topped it off with a messy splash of Sprite, spilling most of it onto the counter. Then he walked back over, set it down roughly in front of me, and walked away again. He didn't bother with the Budweiser, and I didn't bother pressing him for it. More trouble than it was worth, I reckoned. I sat there and sipped my drink slowly, watching CNN on the television, but not really paying attention to it. It was hard to focus on anything at all when you could just feel that every single pair of eyes in the room was stuck onto you like glue. That you were the center of attention for reasons that were probably not so good. I finished the drink and felt like I needed one more to get a tolerable buzz going. Tried to get the bartender's attention again, but this time he just straight up ignored me. Just kept facing ahead while leaning against the back shelf, taking swigs out of a Smirnoff bottle before putting it back, lightly swaying on his feet. The guy was plastered. At a point, it starts to become a blow to your ego, and this was about to that point. I began shouting at him, something like, "Come on, man, can a guy not get a drink?" Maybe, probably, with a bit of an edge in my voice. He still wouldn't look at me. I looked down at the rest of the bar, and suddenly nobody else was looking at me either. It's like the entire room had suddenly and collectively agreed to pretend like I no longer existed. "What the hell is wrong with you people?" I shouted. "Nothing against you, buddy," somebody I couldn't see who shouted back. "There's just too many people in here right now." I asked out loud what the hell was that supposed to mean. "It's 5 o'clock on a Tuesday," the bartender spoke up, his tone implying that he was explaining something painfully obvious. "Think about it, yeah? How busy can a Chili's get on a Tuesday at 5 o'clock? Just think about it. If we don't sell this, then nobody gets paid. So quit your whining and come back when it's emptier." Any further questions of mine fell on deaf ears. I was invisible again. I slapped one of the $10 bills onto the counter and stood up and left the place. For the next few hours, I sort of just wandered around, my head in a bit of a daze, still not fully convinced that this wasn't a dream. I went over to the food court, ate some KFC. The guy working the counter there didn't say a word to me, communicating via nothing but head nods. Then, when I bit into the chicken, I realized that some of it was still raw. I just ate around it. After that, I went over to the Under Armour store, spent some time looking over some knockoff jackets, the labels read Andre Armoire, that nevertheless seemed comparable in quality to the real thing. I picked one of them up, along with a t-shirt. Surprisingly, the lady who worked there was actually pretty nice. Actually put some effort into being an employee. Or maybe she was a real employee? After that, I was down to just $20 and went over to the movie theater, which was completely empty. Except for a woman who was asleep behind the box office and some guy sweeping the floors. The screen that was supposed to be displaying what was playing was glitched, completely bugging out, so I went up to the guy and asked him what was on. He just shrugged, said that it could be anything. Then I asked how I was supposed to buy a ticket, and he said all I needed to do was go up to the box office and put a $10 bill on the counter, then I could go into any of the theaters. But to try and not wake Lindsay up, since she gets real cranky when that happens, and he doesn't want to deal with it. I parted ways with another bill, then went into the closest theater, catching about 2/3 of that last Avatar movie, the one with the fire in it. There was only one other person in the theater, sitting near the front. They were there when I'd walked in, and they didn't move after the film had finished. I left the theater and went into a washroom, took a piss, splashed my face with cold water while looking at myself in the mirror, taking deep breaths. Now, the anxiety was starting to break through. The fear as well. After I'd finished drying myself, the stall closest to the wall opened up. I looked over, seeing the door hanging ajar, but nobody emerging from behind it. Through the gap at the bottom, I could see a pair of dirty white sneakers. I guess whoever they belonged to was just standing there, which was a really freaky thing to think about. And I left the washroom shortly after, looking over my shoulder to make sure nobody tried to follow me out, and nobody did. There were a few more odd occurrences after this. I walked past an electronics store, and this short, older dude came out from behind the counter with this big smile on his face and tried gesturing for me to come inside. Cell phone, he kept saying. Fix cell phone. I told him my cell phone didn't need any fixing, and his expression dropped like a stone in a lake. I watched him as he walked back into the store and rolled down the security gates and disappeared behind them. Then the lights went off inside. There was also this lady walking around with a metal tray, claiming to be offering samples of cinnamon rolls. The cinnamon rolls in question being dollops of thick, gray, bubbling sludge. Safe to say, I passed on it. At some point, I had what I believe was a panic attack. Never had one before, but I think this was it. Tightness in the chest, an overwhelming sense of dread. I found a bench somewhere and took a seat. Pulled up some breathing exercises on YouTube and tried to replicate them. To my surprise, they worked pretty well. I went back to the food court, spending my last $10 on a large peanut butter milkshake from Baskin-Robbins with a bunch of chocolate BS blended into it. And that's where I am now, just sitting here, waiting for 9 to hit so I can get the hell out of whatever the hell this place is. But I'm feeling better now, I think. Maybe it's just the dopamine from all the sugar, but I'm feeling alright. Enough that I think I'll be able to get through this. Oh shit, there's a guy walking towards me now. He just sat down beside me. The good news is, I'm back in my apartment now, mostly unscathed. The not so good news is that, as much as I need the money, I'm not sure I can go back to that place. So, about the guy in the food court. He was young, maybe early 20s, tall and skinny, brown hair cut into a short fade, looked like a bog standard college kid. He sat next to me, started making small talk, asking how my day had been, was the milkshake good, etc. I tried ignoring him at first, but he seemed nice and normal and coherent enough that I started to feel bad about it. So we got to talking a bit. He told me his name was Daniel and that he used to be a copywriter, but got laid off around 6 months ago and hasn't been able to find anything since. So that's what he was doing here. What about you? He then asked. Why are you here? Right at that moment, I felt comfortable enough to tell him the truth. I told him about the gambling, the debts, the collectors. It felt nice and cathartic airing out my dirty laundry to a complete stranger, so I just kept on going. I didn't stop talking until my eyes drifted down and landed on the shoes he was wearing. These really worn, scuffed white sneakers. Okay, I thought, could be a coincidence, and even if it was the same guy from the bathroom, then so what? But then I remembered Scott's message, specifically his instructions about what I was supposed to do if somebody tried talking to me, and then the realization washed over me like a cold wave. I suddenly stood up, told him I had to get going. He started protesting, telling me that I should stick around because he had something he wanted to show me. I told him I was tired and I really needed to get home. He started grinning, showing off blocky, chiclet teeth, really stretching his lips as wide as they could go, and then a bit wider than that, looking really uncanny. He asked me again what I was doing here. Shopping, I told him, just shopping. He pointed out that I didn't have any bags, so what could I have been shopping for? I started scanning the floor around me before remembering that I'd left the Under Armour bag in the washroom. He started laughing in this jovial manner, though there was something clearly ominous beneath it. You're not here to shop, are you? He asked. Then what? Why are you here? I snuck a glance at my phone and saw 8:50. I repeated that I really had to leave, and then I turned around, started heading for the exit. To my dismay, I could hear his steps keeping pace behind me. Once I got to the doors, I checked the time again. 8:55. I turned, and Daniel, or whoever the hell he was still there, standing about a half dozen feet away. "Don't you have to go home?" he questioned, holding on to that grin. "Door's right there. Why don't you leave?" By now, I was checking my phone every few seconds, no longer making an attempt to hide it. He laughed again, said that if I wasn't going home, I may as well come and see what he wants to show me. Now, the panic had returned, and I really had to force myself to stay put for just a few more minutes. Minutes that seemed to be stretching into infinity, but I told myself that I was ready to sprint the second he tried making a move. I started wondering who I was more scared of, Renzo or this guy right in front of me. It came up inconclusive. As the seconds ticked down, he continued goading me to come with him, each request insinuating more of a threat than the last. The grin slowly fading, twisting into something more outwardly malicious. The moment that clock hit 9, I tried to bolt, though I didn't get far. The bastard grabbed onto my collar and started dragging me back. I tried yanking myself away, but the freak had this inexplicable iron grip. It was nothing but luck that I'd been wearing one of my old, cheap shirts, the fabric of which was already starting to tear. I jerked myself forward a few more times until it shredded off my back. Once free, I lunged ahead and pushed the door open, vaulting myself outside and tripping over my own feet, elbows planting hard onto the concrete. A searing pain jolted up my arms, and I think I heard something crack, but I wasn't too worried about it in the moment. More concerned about making sure Daniel wasn't about to drag me back inside. I scrambled to my feet and spun around to face the doors, bracing myself for, well, I don't know what. Maybe for him to be charging towards me like a bull. Which he wasn't. He remained inside, his face now pressed up against the glass, features pancaked into this odd, grotesque visage. Staring at me with wide, bulging eyes, relentlessly dragging his tongue across the glass in a circular pattern. Like he'd suddenly forgot how to act like a human, or maybe he just didn't care anymore. No longer felt the need to keep up the front. I just stood there and stared back, convinced that the second I tried to move, he would do the same. I'm not sure how long this little stalemate of ours went on for, but I remember my heart racing the entire time, beating faster and faster, approaching a point where I thought it might just explode. But eventually, he did leave. Detached his face from the glass and spun around and just walked off. I doubled over, puked up some bile, and took several deep breaths before walking over to my car, cold and shirtless, watching the sun dip into the horizon. I wasn't expecting to find that my tires had all been slashed, all 4 of them. My stomach dropped, then it dropped even further once I looked around and saw that my car was now literally the only one in the entire lot. I tried calling for an Uber, but the network out there was so bad that the app wouldn't load. I could have gone back into the mall and used the Wi-Fi, but screw that. I just leaned on the hood of my car, mulling over my options, feeling a bit numb. My apartment was about 18 miles away, theoretically walkable, but the bigger problem was I really didn't know the way. There was a good chance that if I tried walking, I'd end up in the next town over, especially in the dark, which was something I thankfully didn't have to risk. A few minutes later, the front door swung open and out came a woman, maybe in her 30s, dressed in jeans and a windbreaker. She didn't seem at all too dangerous, but my expectations were up in the air at that point, so I backed away regardless. She walked halfway across the lot before stopping, looking over at me. It seemed like she was about to say something, but then hesitated, looking away for a second before looking back. Then she called out, asking if I needed a ride. I told her I'd love one, but could she first prove to me that she wasn't with the maniac that I just escaped from? She said she wasn't with him, but that she didn't know how she was supposed to prove that to me, and that she wasn't going to wait around, so if I wanted a ride, I should make that decision soon. I shivered. It was starting to get cold out. She never questioned why I was shirtless. I then asked where her car was. She told me to follow her, but not before flashing the Glock attached to her hip. She said she didn't think I was a threat, but that she absolutely would not hesitate to shoot if I tried anything. And I assured her that I wasn't going to try anything. She'd parked about a half mile away from the mall on a dirt patch in the forest, well hidden from the road. I asked her why she had parked all the way out there and not in the lot. She told me that the first time she'd left her car in the lot after 8 p.m., her tires had gotten slashed. I then asked her how long she's been working at the mall. She said she didn't really want to talk about it, that she'd prefer if we just sat in silence for the duration of the trip. So we did. Once we were in the city, she dropped me off at a train station. I didn't have any cash for a ticket, but I was pretty close to my apartment, only about a 10-minute walk away. I thanked her and hopped out. Before she took off, I asked her what her name was. She just shook her head and said it'd be pointless for me to know. When I got home, I drained the rest of the vodka in my fridge and passed out on my couch. When I woke up this morning, I checked my phone and saw a notification from my bank. I'd been e-transferred $3,000. I also had another email from Scott. Hey man, I heard you might have had a rough first day, so I sent you a bit extra on top of the promised amount. Your hours are the same for today, 2 to 9 p.m. And also man, just remember what I said before. You're a customer in there, so act like it. It's about 10:30 a.m. right now, and I'm just lying on the couch, sipping some Clamato juice, not really wanting to move, especially not to go back to that place. I spent some time trying to calculate how far $3,000 could get me if I skipped town and concluded probably not very far. Then I tried conjuring up some other ways I might be able to cover the last $7,000 before asking myself who I was kidding. I really don't want to go back there, but I know I'll probably have to. Okay, so that was a really great story, but I know I normally say like, oh yeah, no, I wouldn't go back there. I wouldn't do that. I would run away from this. But this guy honestly just went in and did terrible. Like if somebody came up to me and asked me, hey, what are you doing here? I'm like, oh yeah, like I'm just here because I wanted to go to Chili's and get some drinks. No, I'm actually just here to go to the Andre Armore store to get some new clothes to work out in. Shout out to Mr. Outlaw. That was some great writing. Anyways, let's move on to the next story. It's from r/no sleep from user Horror Junkie 123. My husband cheated on me. Ever since I found out, he's been acting different. Justin and I had been together for 10 years, married for 6. I'd been with him for my whole adult life. We'd been dating since I was 17 and he was 18. I always thought he was my soulmate, the man I wanted to grow old with. Turns out, I was wrong. I was devastated when I found out. Yes, Justin had been staying out later than usual, and his explanations were usually flimsy at best. I'm not stupid. I had my suspicions, but I think I just really didn't want to come to terms with the fact that my husband was seeing another woman. Honestly, I might have gone years without discovering the truth, but Justin got sloppy. Welcome home, honey. Fun night out with the guys after work again? Uh-huh, Justin grumbled, pushing past me. I made dinner if you're hungry. Beef tips and rice. I know it's one of your favorites. Ate at the bar. I'm going to bed, he muttered, steadying himself against the wall before woozily clomping up the stairs. My heart sank. Nights like those were becoming more and more frequent. I loved my husband. All I wanted was to spend a little quality time with him after a long day at work, but he couldn't even spare me a few minutes. I glanced up at him as he lumbered up the steps, a tear trickling down my cheek. In an instant, any sadness that I felt was replaced by burning rage, because when Justin passed underneath the overhead light, I saw what appeared to be a hickey on the side of his neck. A cocktail of emotions swirled within me. Despair, resentment, betrayal, they all hit me like a ton of bricks. I was stunned. I didn't know what to do. I mean, who would? The man I had been head over heels for all that time had stabbed me in the back. I was in disbelief. I stumbled to the kitchen, pulling out a chair before I could collapse. I stared into space, trying to make sense of what I'd seen. I sat there for a long time, deep in thought. After a while, I felt numb, like my entire personality had been flushed down the drain, leaving nothing but an empty husk. Then a thought flashed across my mind. I'd been mistaken. That had to be it. Just a mere trick of the light. It was a pretty dimly lit hallway after all. Whatever the case, I had to know. I tiptoed upstairs, abandoning my dinner. I crept up to our room as quiet as a church mouse before lightly pushing open the bedroom door. Justin was fast asleep. I didn't waste any time. I rushed across the room, careful to avoid any squeaky floorboards, and I inspected Justin's neck. His snores grew louder as I approached. He always was a heavy sleeper. I cursed when I got a closer look. Justin was sleeping on his side, and I was not going to try to roll him over. I glanced around, searching for anything that might provide concrete evidence. My eyes fell to the bedside table. Bingo. I snatched Justin's phone from its charger. I held my breath as I pressed his meaty thumb under the screen to unlock it. I grinned, feeling a rush of exhilaration as I achieved my goal. What, huh? I froze. Justin groggily opened his eyes a sliver as my hand hovered over him. My blood turned to ice, and I prayed with all my might that my husband would just go back to sleep. To my immense shock, my prayers were answered. Justin mumbled incoherently under his breath before grabbing a fistful of covers and nodding off. I'd escaped by the skin of my teeth. I had to be more careful. The first thing I did was check Justin's texts. I immediately saw a woman's name I didn't recognize. My heart shattered when I read the messages. Hey, last night was incredible. See you again after work today? You're damn right. I wish you never had to leave. What about that wife of yours, though? Won't she get suspicious? Her? Not a chance. Even if she does find out, she won't leave. I could do anything, and she'd still think I was a saint. A deep-seated rage bubbled within me. Did Justin really think that little of me? He clearly saw me as nothing more than a spineless, codependent pushover. Well, I'd show him. I screenshotted the evidence, scrolling through dozens of nude photos that I hadn't taken, and sent everything to my number. I deleted any proof of my snooping, then replaced Justin's phone on the charger. I stormed out of the room, grabbing my keys as I went. I made it halfway across the living room when the realization hit me. I had nowhere to go. All my family lived 7 hours away. It was too late to book a decent hotel, and I really didn't want to drag any of my friends into my drama. Not yet, at least. That left me with one option. I had to sleep on the couch. I plopped down onto the sofa and sighed. I didn't want to have to confront it, but I knew what I had to do. In the morning, I was going to find a lawyer and start the divorce process. The thought alone was enough to break me. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't hold back my tears any longer. I cried like a baby, silently sobbing into a scratchy pillow for what must have been hours. My eyes were puffy by the time I was done. I couldn't fathom falling asleep in a state like that, but I must have at some point. Because the next thing I remember, sunlight was flooding through the blinds. Morning, babe, how'd you... The rest of the sentence caught in my throat. That was right. Justin and I were about to be over. I grabbed my phone from the coffee table, tears stinging at the corners of my vision. I opened up the text I'd sent myself as proof that the past 12 hours hadn't been some twisted nightmare, but the messages were gone. My eyes grew wide as I stared at the screen. That couldn't be right. They had been there, clear as day the night before. Something wasn't adding up. I suddenly paused, bolting upright. Was that breakfast? The tantalizing aroma of eggs and bacon wafted around the corner from the kitchen. My brows furrowed. Justin never cooked. My breathing was shallow as I tentatively shuffled toward the kitchen. Curiosity gnawed at me like a piranha. I apprehensively peeked around the corner, unsure of what I would find. To my shock, there was my husband, humming a little tune while flipping pancakes. I rubbed my eyes. Was I seeing things? Surely I was delusional from lack of sleep. That had to have been it. Then Justin turned, his icy blue eyes locking onto mine. Morning, princess. I hope you're hungry. I saw you sleeping on the couch, and I thought you might not be feeling well, so I decided to make you a hot meal to help you get better. My heart skipped a beat. Was this really my husband? It looked like him, sounded like him too. Still, I was weary. Yeah, just feeling a little under the weather is all. Are you feeling okay? You're acting different. Never been better. Honestly, I think I've really turned a new leaf, he said, placing a steaming plate before me. The old Justin is kaput. From now on, I swear, I'm going to be the best husband I can be. Our gazes connected, and I searched his expression for answers. He seemed genuine. If this was an act, it was a damn good one. Thanks, that really makes me happy to hear. Justin beamed at me, the warmth of his smile seeping into my heart. It had been years since he looked at me like that. Well, get used to it, because I'm keeping my word. I love you, Lydia. I wanted to be suspicious. I wanted to remain silent. I wanted to keep my guard up, but how could I? All I needed was love and attention, and I was finally getting it. For the first time in a long time, it felt like my husband actually cared. A big part of me was still leery of my husband. His timing was pretty convenient after all, but even with all my doubts, Justin was seemingly sticking to his promise. He took me out on dates, paid to get my nails done, brought me flowers. He even started shouldering most of the housework. Needless to say, I was impressed. If he would have kept that up, I might have never suspected a thing, but one night, he slipped up. We were cuddled up on the couch watching The Truman Show when I asked. Now, I wish I would have kept my mouth shut. Hey, babe? Yes, my love, Justin asked, his eyes still glued to the screen. If someone close to you was an imposter, like a perfect replica except for a few tiny changes, do you think you'd notice? Justin tensed up, his eyes wide as he slowly turned to face me. A blank stare had overtaken his expression. A chill rippled through my body when he looked at me like that. He was beginning to frighten me. I suppose so. Why do you ask? His voice was monotone, dripping with a tinge of urgency. I didn't know how to process this sudden shift in personality. It's the premise of the movie we're watching. I watched as the color seeped back into his face, and he loosened up, breathing a sigh of relief. I cocked a curious brow. Why was he acting so strange? That makes sense. We sat there in uncomfortable silence, shifting our attention back to the TV screen. After a few more tense moments, I couldn't take it anymore. I've got to use the restroom and charge my phone. I'll be right back. No need to pause the movie for me. Justin nodded before grinning up at me. His smile. Had his teeth always been that straight? Okay, hurry back. Wouldn't want your spot to get cold. Yeah, sure thing. I practically bolted up the stairs, locking myself in our room. I slumped against the door, trying to steady my palpitating heart. What was going on? Was it just me, or was that some seriously freaky behavior? Either way, I needed a second to calm down. I had my eyes shut, focusing on my breathing when I heard it. My phone was buzzing from inside my pocket. I hurriedly retrieved it, glancing at the screen. Unknown number. I normally don't answer calls from strangers, but something compelled me. Maybe it was intuition, or perhaps I just wanted to talk to anyone other than my husband. In the end, I accepted the call. Hello? Lydia? Lydia Atkins? Speaking. Look, this is gonna sound crazy, but I need you to hear what I have to say. Okay. I suddenly jolted up from my spot on the floor and stared at the locked door separating me from the hallway. Loud knocks rattled its frame. Lydia, who are you speaking to? Panic surged through me as I scrambled for an answer. It's my mom. Go back downstairs. I'll be there in a minute. That was him, wasn't it? The caller said. That was my husband, yes. Why do you ask? I whispered, putting as much distance between myself and the door as possible. Lydia, I need you to hear me out. Can you promise me that you will? The pounding on the opposite side of the room grew even louder. Lydia, don't listen to her. She's a liar. My stomach began to twist itself into knots. How did he know? I'm listening. I'll hear what you have to say. The woman on the other end of the line breathed an audible sigh of relief. Okay, my name is Adeline, and Justin and I have been seeing each other for about 9 months. That man in your house is not your husband. My blood turned to ice, and I began to tremble. No, that couldn't be true. In a shaky voice, I asked the question that will haunt me until I die. How do I know you're telling the truth? There was a long pause. The the bangs outside my door reaching a nauseating crescendo. When Adeline answered, I knew without a shadow of a doubt that I was in serious danger. Lydia, for the past week, Justin has been living with me. Okay, so that was part one, and honestly at this point, I have absolutely no clue who this could be. So let's read some more and let's figure that out together. This definitely has me on the edge of my seat though. Adeline, if that's not my husband, then who is it? I tried to be calm, to think rationally, but Adeline must have picked up on the fear in my tone. Look, I don't know, but try to get out of the house if you can. I'm going to send you my address and I'll explain everything in person. I have to go. I'm sorry. The line went dead. All the while, the hammering continued to escalate. Lydia, unlock this door. I swear, if I have to, I'll break this damn thing down. Those words sent a chill down my spine. Justin had only raised his voice at me a handful of times in the decade that I'd known him, and none of them were as threatening as that. I stood there, momentarily stunned, but a hard kick from the other side of the door was all I needed to spur me to move. I snatched my keys from the bedside table and raced to the window overlooking the front lawn. I hurriedly unlocked it and began to pull, a massive surge of adrenaline aiding my efforts. With one final heave, the window gave way, and not a moment too soon. The door began to splinter and crack. A few more hearty blows, and it was done for. I didn't have any time to waste. I punched out the screen, watching it tumble onto the shingles below. I took a deep breath before hoisting myself onto the roof. I had one leg out of the window when it happened. Whoever, or whatever, was pretending to be my husband finally managed to get inside. My eyes grew wide as he charged toward me. Lydia, don't do this. I can explain. I did not want to hear what he had to say. Maybe that was stupid of me. Maybe I should have stayed and talked things out, but in that moment, Adeline's words kept surfacing to forefront of my mind. Now I can only pray that I made the right choice. I pulled myself the remainder of the way out and slid down the roof, desperate to escape my pursuer. I yelped as I felt fingernails graze my arm. My heart jackhammered in my chest as I fell onto the grass. I scrambled to my feet, somehow unscathed aside from a few minor scratches, and bolted to my car. I flung open the door, threw myself inside, and jammed the keys into the ignition. Before I peeled out of the driveway, I briefly glanced up. Justin's look-alike was standing in the window, glowering at me. A devastating sense of dread consumed me as our eyes locked. That's what terrified me the most. His eyes. They were burning with rage, but something about them felt wrong. In fact, his entire face looked off, like he was trying to express an intense emotion, but he didn't quite know how. That instantly destroyed any qualms I had about leaving. I slammed the car into reverse and floored it. I briefly looked back as I sped away, and my stomach twisted itself into knots when I did. The window was empty. I was a wreck the whole way to Adeline's. An overwhelming flood of confusion, resentment, and fear swirled within me as the realization sank in. Justin really had cheated on me, and on top of that, he was leaving me for his mistress. It was all too much to process. I flew down the empty streets, tears trickling down my face. How did this happen? Why me? Why couldn't I have had normal marital problems, like leaving the milk out or arguing over whose turn it was to do the dishes? I didn't ask for any of this. It wasn't fair. Fortunately, I didn't have much time to think about it. Thanks to my erratic driving, I made it to Adeline's place, if you could even call it that, in 10 minutes flat. I quickly parked beside the curb and stepped out. I gazed in bewilderment at the rundown shack as I made my way to the door. The house was tiny compared to ours. Faded yellow paint peeled off the exterior, the shutters clung on for dear life, and empty beer bottles littered the front lawn. I'd be lying if I said it didn't give me a little glint of satisfaction. I took a deep breath as I approached the door. Was I really going through with this? How could I know that Adeline was even telling the truth? Maybe I shouldn't have come. Before I had a chance to mull over any of those thoughts, the door swung open. A young woman, at least 5 years younger than me, stood in the doorway. As much as it pains me to admit it, she was beautiful. Long blonde hair flowed down to her waist, and ocean blue eyes stared into mine. She was a stark contrast to me in every way. "Lydia, come in," I smack. I slapped Adeline hard across the face, leaving an angry red imprint on her cheek. "Sorry, knee-jerk reaction." She nodded, staring down at her feet. "No, I deserve that. Come in, we've got a lot to talk about." I obliged, following her lead. The inside of the home wasn't much better than the outside. Empty takeout containers were strewn about the floor, the carpet was stained with God knows what, and the whole place smelled like cigarette smoke. It took everything in me not to throw up. Adeline rushed to the couch, brushing away some stale potato chips from one of the cushions. "Sorry about the mess. You can have a seat if you want." One glance at the food-crusted sofa, and I instantly knew my answer. Thanks, but I'll stand." "If you say so," Adeline shrugged, claiming the spot for herself. "I guess I've got some explaining to do, huh?" "Yeah, you sure do." Adeline again shifted her gaze to the floor before meeting my stare. "Look, I'm really sorry about Justin. I'm not going to sit here and try to make up some half-assed excuse. I'm a terrible person." I folded my arms across my chest. "You're not wrong. Is he here right now?" "You're at fault too, but Justin's the one I'm really pissed at." "No, he's at the bar. He said he had some drinking to do." "Lydia, I'm really sorry. I know I can't make it up to you, but..." I held my hand to stop her. "As much as I'd love to berate you and listen to you suck up to me the whole night, that's not why I came. I've got bigger problems to worry about. How did you know about whatever took Justin's place?" Adeline bit her lip, twirling a few strands of hair between her fingers. "So, tonight I went with Justin to get some things from y'all's house. He said you usually took a bath around that time, so he was just going to get in and get out before you noticed. But that thing, whatever it is, it met him at the door before he could go inside. I saw them arguing, then Justin walked back to the truck, pale as a ghost. He dropped me back off here without a single word. After I saw that, I knew I had to warn you. I made Justin give me your number, and I called you right when I got home." I nodded, soaking in her revelation. "That makes sense. I was wondering how you got my info, but I still have so many questions. What is that thing, and how did it manage to replace my husband? I mean, it's even got the same truck as he does. How is that possible?" Adeline pursed her lips. "I don't know. I wish I had more answers for you, but Lydia, you have to listen to me. Whatever you're dealing with, I don't think it has good intentions. Watch this. It'll prove that I'm telling the truth," she said, pulling up a video on her phone. I leaned in to get a better look. The video was Justin. He was standing on our front porch talking to himself. I could tell right away that the one facing the camera was the fake. It was too perfect. All its features were too smooth. I couldn't believe I hadn't noticed it before. The longer I watched, the more uneasy I felt. As the conversation progressed, I could tell that the real Justin was getting heated. There was no audio, but I could see him getting visibly more angry, even with his back turned, until it happened. The imposter's face began to twist and contort in unnatural ways. It was as if someone was molding clay with an invisible hand, and that's where the video ended. The sight of it disturbed me on a primal level. My stomach churned, and my head began to spin. I seriously thought I was going to be sick. That's why I had to tell you. I couldn't just sit by and let that monster hurt. A loud pounding against the front door cut Adeline off. Lydia, are you in there? I just want to talk." Adeline and I shared a terrified glance. This couldn't be happening. How had he tracked me down? "Follow me. I'll take you out the back. You parked on the street, right?" Adeline whispered, leaping from the couch. "Yeah, but how do I get around him? Won't he catch me if I make a break for it?" Adeline met my gaze, a fiery determination gleaming in her eyes. "I'll distract him. It's the least I can do. Good luck," she said, ushering me outside. The door clicked shut before I had a chance to thank her. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and without giving myself time to freak out, I raced to my car. I squeezed my keys with a vice grip as I ran. the world around me devolving into a blur of colors. I didn't even spare a glance at the front porch as I flew past. I was too focused on making it off that property alive. I was mere inches from the safety of my car. I was so close, but then I heard it. "Lydia, why are you running? Come on, don't be like this." I fumbled with the keys and scrambled to hop into my car. Justin 2.0 sprinted toward me at an inhuman speed. Behind him, the door to the house was hanging wide open, and Adeline was nowhere to be found. I hurriedly turned my attention back to the steering wheel. I slammed on the gas, my tires squealing as I sped away. I glanced in the rearview mirror, and my heart nearly stopped. The false Justin was standing beneath a street lamp. I don't know if it was my nerves, or maybe the poor lighting, but I could have sworn that when I looked up, he was smiling, and for a moment, I was sure that I saw blood dribbling down his chin. I hyperventilated, tears flooding down my cheeks as I sped away. Once I was satisfied with the amount of distance I'd put between myself and Justin's doppelganger, I rolled into a gas station and parked at one of the pumps. I felt so lost, so confused. What the hell had just happened? Why did this thing want to track me down so badly? And Adeline, what had he done to her? I wasn't sure I wanted the answer to that question. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my palpitating heart. "It's going to be okay. Just calm down and come up with a game plan. It'll all be over soon," I muttered, staring reassuringly at myself in the rearview mirror. I didn't truly believe that, but I had to do something. I couldn't afford to keep crying my eyes out and waiting there like a sitting duck. I needed a plan. So I did the only thing I could think to do. I hopped out of my car and prepaid for gas. My head was on a swivel as I inserted the nozzle of the tank. The gas station was desolate, except for an older gentleman smoking a cigarette by the front door. My foot tapped against the concrete as the fuel gauge slowly ticked up. My heart pounded like a jackhammer the entire time, just waiting to see that familiar red truck pulling beside me. But it never did. I breathed a sigh of relief, placing the fuel pump back into its compartment. I glanced back at the man by the door for a split second before jumping back into the driver's seat. He was talking on the phone now, and was he grinning at me? I didn't want to wait to figure out what he was planning. I zipped down the road and onto the interstate. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew that I needed to get far away from my husband's look-alike. Once I was on the open road and all the fear had begun to dissipate, it hit me. Everything. The cheating, the lies and betrayal, all of it. It all crashed down on me like a tidal wave. What hurt the most was the false sense of security I was lulled into. I had let myself believe that Justin had changed, that he turned a new leaf with no provocation whatsoever. The thought that all that time, none of the love I'd been given was real, it shattered my heart all over again. I'm not ashamed to admit that I cried. I sobbed uncontrollably as I continued down sparsely populated roads. I didn't want to be on the run from some unknown entity. I wanted to go back home and take a nice warm bath, but I knew I couldn't do that. I had been driving for a little over 3.5 hours before I started to get low on fuel again. I pulled off on the nearest exit. By that point, the adrenaline had worn off, and I was starting to get tired. I soon found myself at a rundown Motel 6 in the middle of bumfuck Egypt. The red and blue sign flickered as I pulled into the parking lot. A great indicator of the quality of the room I'd be staying in. I took a deep breath and looked at myself in the mirror. "Come on, Lydia, you can do this," I murmured, stepping out of the car. My eyes darted from left to right as I made my way to check in. My BMW looked so out of place, beside all the rusted clunkers sprinkled throughout the lot. I picked up my pace, my heart rate spiking. A bell chimed as I opened the door to retrieve my key. A young man with black, greasy hair sat behind the counter, reading a Playboy magazine. He didn't even look up as I approached. Hi, can I get a room?" The boy lazily glanced up at me before releasing a sigh. "Sure, $50. I pursed my lips as I fished around in my wallet. $50 a night for this dump? What a ripoff. I slapped the cash onto the counter, thanking my lucky stars that I wouldn't have to risk getting my bank information stolen from their credit card reader. The boy, whose name tag read Steven, handed me the key for room number 12 before pocketing the cash. "Thanks," I said, shooting him a glare as I snatched the keys. He gave me a slight nod before returning to his magazine. I nearly sprinted to room 12. I hurriedly jammed the key into the lock before shoving the door open. Right as I was closing it, something caught my eye. Headlights. I kept the door cracked just enough to see. Silly, right? Surely, I was just being paranoid. There was no way that it was him. Justin's truck cruised into the parking lot. It was unmistakable. The faded red paint, the dent on the driver's side door, the crack running down the entirety of the windshield. It was all there. I quietly locked myself in the room, my head spinning. How was this happening? I was so far from home. How had he found me again? The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. How stupid could I possibly be? The answer was so simple. I pulled out my phone and there it was. Justin and I were sharing our locations. With everything that had happened, I hadn't even thought to turn it off. I knew it was too late, but I turned off location services anyway. I felt nauseous as I placed my phone back in my pocket. How accurate was that thing? Did the doppelganger know what room I was in? Morbid curiosity got the best of me. I had to know. With a shaky hand, I brushed back the blinds to my window. The second I did, tears began to trickle down my cheeks, and my blood turned to ice. He was outside. Justin's impersonator was standing directly outside my window. His eyes were wide and manic. The grin he wore looked off, like it was too big for his face. I couldn't move. I was paralyzed with fear. The fake Justin walked up to the glass and paused for just a moment. The silence was so deafening that the only audible noise was the blood pumping in my ears. And then he moved. His tongue lolled out of his mouth, and he slapped it against the glass with a wet thump. He dragged it upward, those inhuman eyes never breaking contact with mine. "I found you. It's time to stop running and let me in." His smile vanished as he gritted out those words. That was enough to snap me from my stupor. I let the blinds fall over the window and stumbled backwards, nearly crashing into a table. That's where I am now, writing this at that table. I'm done for. It's only a matter of time before he breaks in. I phoned the front desk, but no one answered. I called the police too, but response times are slow this far out in the boonies. This will likely be my final update. If the cops don't show up on time, I don't know what it'll do to me. My hands are trembling as I type this. He's trying to kick the door down, and I don't think it's going to hold. To anyone reading this, please, please listen to me. If you notice a sudden change in a loved one's personality, don't brush it off, because it just might be this thing, wearing their face. You hear that, guys? Pay close attention to your people, because you just really never know. Also, I totally get it's for the sake of the story. I'm just saying, if I were in that situation, my first instinct wouldn't be, oh my gosh, I need to go post this on Reddit right now. Now, shout out to Horror Junkie 123, incredible writing as always. If you liked today's video, drop a like and subscribe. If you didn't, I post every day, so maybe you'll like tomorrow's. Huge shout out to my channel members. Thank you so much for your support. If you guys want to support the channel further, that link's going to be down in the description, but it is totally your choice, completely optional, and I appreciate you watching to the end of the video either way. If you made it this far, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you tomorrow. Peace.